Hello, I'm Howard McWilliam. I'm an illustrator based in Cheltenham, and for the last 13 years I've been drawing the covers of The Week. We try to make the covers a striking commentary on the new subject matter, and to mark the magazine's 25th anniversary I'd like to show you how I work on the cover. Now this week the cover story is the confusing new guidance on the lockdown measures and how they'll be easing, and we're doing a take on Georges Seurat's Sunday at Le Grand Yacht. It's similar in a way to a lot of internet memes which are going around of policemen appearing in old paintings and photographs and things. In this case we want a policeman in the scene looking very confused as to whether or not he should be arresting anyone. So my setup is, I have my computer here, and you'll see there's a lot of reference material. So I've got Seurat's painting here and pictures of policemen here, and I'm working on my iPad Pro here. You can see I've sketched out a composition of Seurat's image, but I've adjusted the placement of the figures to accommodate the Week's square cover format as opposed to Seurat's landscape image. And I've left a space here where I'm going to be drawing in a policeman figure in the middle of this scene. Going back to the very beginning, I always start any illustration with a very faint thumbnail sketch of the bare bones composition and then pencil the detail on top. Things do change slightly as I work. For example, we initially thought to put the Palace of Westminster in the background to anchor this in the UK rather than France, but it seemed a bit confusing and unnecessary, so it disappears. We let our British Bobby do the work of geography. Once the detailed sketch is established and approved by the editors, it's time to put some rough colour on. Despite working digitally, I tend to work very much as I would with traditional paints, using a ground colour as a background, in this case pale blue, and then blocking in the tones and hues very loosely. Okay, so now that we've got our ground colours in place, I need to move into the coloured dots of the pointillism technique that Seurat used. And one of the beauties of working digitally is that you can take certain shortcuts in doing that. And what I've done, using the strangely named program I use called Procreate, is to create my own brushes that emulate the Seurat technique. So by hand drawing some dabs of paint here, you can recreate that and bringing in a randomness of colour to that stroke. It shifts the stroke, mirrors it left and right, flips it around. So you always get a different stroke, but you're bringing in all these different elements of colour to every stroke you do instead of individually painting every dot, which is going to save a lot of time in the next part of the process as we begin to paint in that background colour. And I've also created several different types of this brush using different dabs, so some are round, some are larger, some are smaller. So by mixing these up, I can create a good sense of variety throughout the image. So now I can work through the whole illustration with these brushes to incorporate many different hues into each area of colour in those little pointillist dots. Things now start to look a lot more vivid than in the paler undercoat at the blocking stage. At this point, the editors decide it might look better to have our policeman in high vis and larger if at all possible. It's making these kind of experiments when working digitally really pays off. But his new position puts him in the large area of foreground shade, which is a problem. He just won't look right in shadow, so I decided to tamper with Seurat's composition and shrink the area of shade, using some artistic license to put the two women behind the policeman in the sunlight as well. Now that I've got the thumbs up from the editors, it's on to the grunt work of putting in the detail. Copying Seurat makes this easier in one way. After all, he's made a lot of the decisions for me, but it's more difficult in that I'm on unfamiliar terrain with the technique. This is the stage where the illustration starts to come together and move beyond what I call the ugly stage. Just as with traditional painting, things tend to lighten up as I go, with the final highlights the last thing added. And it would be nice if I really could work as fast as this time-lapse recording. It's nearly there now, and I'm just looking around the image for final tweaks. This stage can go on and on if you let it, but at some point you just have to call it a day. It's time to go and send the final illustration to the week. With a bit of luck, it doesn't compare too shabbily with Seurat's original. And some hours later, it reaches its ultimate guise as the cover story of the magazine. And just like all the other subscribers, I look forward to it arriving through the letterbox so that I can read all the hard work of everyone else on the team.